Welcome to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. You're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of anywhere else? And that's because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They don't even read any of the comments. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. So we're watching a clip of First Things First. Talking about, the trade with the Texans of Diggs, and, how good will CJ Stroud be now and the Texans as a whole, and, what type of impact will this be? Because it seems like obviously a pretty big splash move. It's another huge receiver for Diggs, for CJ Stroud, and, but Diggs does have a history at this point. One can make the argument that the quarterbacks are better with him, fair, but he also has been problematic. He puts a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks, and he gets upset, and he doesn't respect, he doesn't fall in line. Like, he has legitimate, behavioral issues, however you want to define them. He's definitely proving to be quite the stereotypical, diva-esque wide receiver, which is crazy that that's such a consistent stereotype in the NFL, to be quite honest with you. But let's take a listen to see what they have to say, see if they point out anything interesting, and then we'll break it down from there.
This year. I'm talking about this. He's a sophomore. I think he could be league MVP this year.
I was going to take it a step further.
Oh.
Ceiling,
Super Bowl.
MVP, Super Bowl.
Man, you guys are really going for it.
That's the ceiling.
Okay.
Now, that's not saying he's going to get to the Super Bowl,
Super Bowl
definitely.
MVP?
I mean, if they, I guess so. Yeah, if he's there.
Yeah.
But I agree, MVP, but also Super Bowl.
Man,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's. I don't
It's a
think
ceiling,
that's a hot take.
it's not a. No.
No, I don't. I think that I think we know pretty early on quarterbacks these days. Actually, I don't think there's a ton.
That wouldn't be good for Trevor.
Ooh.
So I disagree.
We don't
with
know
you.
about Trevor.
So I disagree.
He's stealing
I'm
Colin's
trying to
take.
turn for the second segment, have a Trevor Lawrence out of nowhere discussion. We can if we'd like. I fundamentally disagree with what Trevor has shown. I think we do know on Trevor. I think the Jags know on Trevor. You guys don't. That's fine. We can debate it another day. My point is, I think quarterbacks that are terrible their first year starting are usually, not always, terrible. Josh Allen, by the way, is the exception to that. He was terrible his first year, and it took him a while. Maybe that was his school, whatever it was. CJ was great. This is something, as high as Brew is on CJ, and Brew was much higher on CJ coming in the league than I was. Brew's closer to Mangini on show me a little more. With CJ, I'm not. I feel like I know he's great. I feel like right now, if you made the argument, he is the second most valuable player in the league as far as like trade value, like Bill Simmons would do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you get him for the rest
Especially
of their with the contract and all of it. That it's Mahomes than CJ. I would be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Thanks for.
Well, all right. They kept that take pretty short. I understand being real high on CJ Stroud. I really, really do. But as I've said in the past, the NFL is littered with quarterbacks who have had, great seasons or two, and then just never really did much beyond that. We can look to a Derek Carr or a Carson Wentz as the two most recent ones come to mind. It's not to say that they're just both complete scrubs or even equals in that regard, but they had similar seasons where they were like taking over the NFL. They were going to be the MVP, and then they both got injured near the end of the season, didn't get the MVP, and then never recaptured that magic, so to speak. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with CJ Stroud. I'm not saying that at all. But, the argument always is that when you're a new quarterback, whether it be a backup or a rookie or whatever, that it takes like a minute for people to get tape on you and to figure out how to scheme against you and all of this. And right, that's where they have the sophomore slump and all of that. I think CJ Stroud is legit and will be a great quarterback, but make no mistake about it, and I've talked about this as well in the past, is the Texans have a great OC. And so it is completely feasible that he leaves and CJ Stroud ends up taking, a step back. We've seen this again and again and again. And one of the more recent examples of this has been Shane Steichen floating around and watching quarterbacks play worse once he leaves, whether it be, a situation with Jalen Hurts, Herbert, like any of that type of thing. Same thing with Josh Allen and Dable. And that is why having your offensive head coach be, you have a coach who's offensive driven, because then he's not going anywhere, especially if he's obviously good. That is the stability and the huge benefit that, say, a Patrick Mahomes has with an Andy Reid, or Shanahan or McVay, any of those types of situations. So to me, if we want to give, we don't want to give any flowers to Purdy. And Nick always wants to say about being consistent and says, that he's Mr. Consistent, and as well as saying, when a player plays a really good first season, that means they're going to be good. And if they have a bad season, that means they're going to be, bad from a career perspective. And then what's your argument against Brock Purdy? And if you want to say that it's just all his team, I mean, I've said that the 49ers have a great team and that has helped Brock Purdy, but at the same time, I don't think that you can just put anyone in there and you're just going to have that same level of success. And then you can make the argument that CJ Stroud is significantly benefiting from, a few things. One, potentially having the next Shanahan as your OC, which is a big deal. That is a huge deal. That's what Purdy has. Purdy has the Shanahan system, as well as having some pretty nice pieces, nice defense, but make no mistake about it. I mean, CJ Stroud also looked completely lost in the playoffs against the Ravens. I mean, yeah, it was competitive in the very beginning, and you're like, I don't know, can they pull this off? And then no. I mean, and Nick, if you remember, predicted that CJ Stroud was going to hang like 30 plus on the Ravens, and that Lamar Jackson was going to do nothing, and it ended up being the complete opposite of that. So I do agree, though, with what Bruce saying about the ceiling. I could see them making a Super Bowl. I'm not predicting it because CJ Stroud is young. He does need to go through some more growing pains, I believe. But if their OC does prove to be, like the next Shanahan or the next McVay, the next Shane Steichen even, then I can genuinely see them making the Super Bowl. But getting past a team like the Kansas City Chiefs will be brutal. That's not going to be any easy feat, because I think the Chiefs are going to continue to get better, and just the experience and the confidence that, of course, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have together, they're not going to be outplayed or outcoached. But, at this point, if the Texans really do have, if they really are building this team that is truly, truly legit, and Stephon Diggs actually comes from a more humble place and falls in line, then I think that they could be absolutely deadly. But as I've said this in a previous video, and then also O'Shea, I wanted to bring up to the comments, he talks about, he says, even with Diggs going to Houston, I'm still taking Baltimore and Cincinnati to beat not only the Texans, but have a better chance versus Kansas City in the playoffs. And I think that's totally fair. How long will it be before Diggs is doing what he did in Buffalo, demanding the ball and putting pressure on Slowick and CJ? And that's the thing. That is Diggs's past. It just is. I mean, he's done it. He's caused problems, and he carries on the sideline, and shows up the quarterback. And CJ Stroud seems like a pretty humble, quiet, more reserved, passive type person. And I'm afraid what ends up happening is very similar to what A.J. Brown is doing to Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown is this big personality, this over-the-top personality. And Jalen Hurts is a lot more calm and reserved and a little bit withdrawn and, leads in quiet more than anything. And A.J. Brown is always carrying on. And then Jalen Hurts feels obligated to force the ball. Now, granted, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are actual, genuine best friends, apparently. Apparently, they, talk, every single day. And they text each other all the time before they even played, on the same team together. So they have a different type of relationship. But, if you can't get along with Josh Allen, I find that concerning. You can't get along with Kirk Cousins. I mean, you're talking about guys that are just genuine, nice, laid back, not big ego, not big personality type guys. Guys that don't throw their teammates under the bus. They don't cause problems. Kirk Cousins not causing problems. Josh Allen's not causing problems. And then and yet Diggs had problems with both of them. I think that's cause for concern. But I think they're going to, ironically, a better culture at this specific time. I think what the Texans have built, what DeMarco has built, they can potentially absorb that and make sure that everyone's in line. But I could see it going very similarly as the Eagles, where everything was great that first year, high-flying offense, legit defense, going, boom. And then when you don't win the Super Bowl the next season, things don't start off as great. And then that's when A.J. Brown is carrying on. I mean, A.J. Brown was carrying on in, I think it was the NFC Championship game. I mean, it was a runaway. They were dominating. It was that or the game before that, I forget. And A.J. Brown was just carrying on and was all upset because he wasn't getting the ball. And it was like, they were dominating. That's why I think it was against the Giants. They were dominating, and it was just like, we're not even throwing the ball anymore. We're just handing it off, and he was carrying on the sideline, and it was just like, what are you doing? Things are going well. It might have also been the NFC Championship game because I remember thinking you're going to the Super Bowl and you're carrying on right now. Like, get over yourself. It was just ridiculous, and so. That things concern me. And those types of behaviors seem to be shared behaviors among these top tier wide receivers. It just seems to go hand in hand for whatever reason. So be on the lookout for that. If all things are going well, then absolutely the Texans can be truly horrifying and can really destroy and can really, make some moves. But I do think it's got implosion potential, especially if they get off to a slower start, especially if CJ Stroud maybe slightly comes back down to earth. Maybe they do, have a little bit more tape on him and they know what to expect in any given moment, like that definitely happens. There are legit growing pains, even in Patrick Mahomes' brilliance and eliteness. He's had certain years where he started off seasons where you're just like, because at first you're just like, well, Patrick Mahomes will never play bad. And I forget what it was. It was like, he has never thrown an interception in, the month of September or whatever it was. And in the one season, he threw 4 interceptions, whatever it was. And people were panicking. They were like, oh my God, is Patrick Mahomes not really as good as we thought he was? And again, he needed to get together with Andy Reid and get brought back down to earth to be like, okay, listen, this is what we need to do. Your mechanics, this, that, and the third. They had to work around it. And not every team, not every player has that luxury of being able to do that, to have the experience and the decades of wisdom of Andy Reid. So that's really just my long-winded way of saying that these things are pretty much guaranteed to happen. They even happened with the Patrick Mahomes. So you have to imagine it's going to happen with CJ Stroud. And if it does, do they have the team and the personnel around him to be able to weather those storms and to get back on track? Does Diggs start to get disengaged? Because again, when A.J. Brown first got to the Eagles, they hit the ground running and everything was amazing. And then at the first moment of him not getting the ball, he was carrying on like a baby. And it was just like, the team is rolling. In that moment, you need to be cheering, screaming, and giving a high five and a smack on the butt to Devontae Smith and cheering him on for him having a big game, because he's gotten a lot less, targets ever since you got there. Being a true team player, something that Diggs has just not proven to be. So those are just my thoughts, though. I would absolutely love to hear yours. Please let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. Do you think what do you think CJ Stroud's ceiling is? And do you think the Texans have a legitimate chance at making some noise in the AFC and potentially dethroning, dare I say it, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? And please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.